Yoga means mystic activities or mystic elevation. When one tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and takes fully to Krishna consciousness and devotional service, his action is called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, Buddhi Yoga is the process by which one gets out of the entanglement of this material world. The ultimate goal of progress is Krishna. People do not know this. Therefore, the association of devotees and a bona fide spiritual master are important. One should know that the goal is Krishna. And when the goal is assigned, then the path is slowly but progressively traversed and the ultimate goal is achieved. When a person knows the goal of life but is addicted to the fruits of activities, he is acting in Karma Yoga. When he knows the goal is Krishna but he takes pleasure in mental speculations to understand Krishna, he is acting in Jnana Yoga. And when he knows the goal and seeks Krishna completely in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, he is acting in Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, which is the complete yoga. The complete yoga is the highest perfectional stage of life. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but still, if he is not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately to attain him. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Rahunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhudgina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishbhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Guru Vaishnav Bhagwan Tine Rasmarane Hoye Vigna Vinashan Anayashe Hoye Nijavanchita Puran Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna everybody. Today we are discussing a very famous verse, I would say. But it's quite a deep verse, the more you think about it. So it's one of in Bhagavad Gita also you have a concept called Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, which means that the whole Bhagavad Gita, if you don't have time to read the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, you can read these 4 verses, which span from chapter 10, verse number 8 to verse number 11. So if you read these verses, then you can understand the whole meaning of Bhagavad Gita also. So over here, this is the 3rd verse of the Chatushloki, in which Krishna is saying that to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. Now this is quite an interesting concept, because here Krishna is saying that ultimately, if you want to attain him, the goal is obtained through the goal itself. So that means that if you want to obtain the goal, you don't have to do any other means to obtain the goal, but the goal is obtained through Krishna himself. So if you want to obtain Krishna, he's obtained through Krishna himself. You don't need anything else. And there's a nice story in this regard actually. So interestingly enough, this story comes from Islamic literature, but it's quite interesting, so I'll just recite it anyways. So once upon a time, there was a king, and this king was, he had a wall that he wanted painted. So what he did was he decided to, actually he had a room that he wanted painted. So what he did was he heard from different people that there are very nice Greek painters and there are very nice Chinese painters. So what he did was he gave 1/2 of the room to the Greek and 1/2 of the room to the Chinese, and he asked them to paint the room in a particular way. So there was a curtain in the middle, and then we saw that the Chinese painters, they were bringing all kinds of material. They were bringing so many different kinds of paints, so many different kinds of materials, and they basically went and they painted it so beautifully. The Greek, on the other hand, they were not bringing too much. They were bringing only a few things to paint this wall of theirs. Interestingly enough, after 21 days, the curtains were taken off so that the king would come and see what was there. So the king first went to the Chinese people, and over there he saw that it was painted extravagantly. It was painted so well, like there were paintings that no one had ever seen before. So the king, he looked at that and he was somewhat impressed. He said, yeah, this is good. So then he went to the Greek side. And what did he see on the Greek side? On the Greek side, there was absolutely nothing. What had they done? Instead of painting, all they had done was they had polished the whole room. And the way they had polished it, when the king went inside, what he saw was his own reflection. So he was seeing his reflection on the front wall, the top wall, the side walls on both sides. So then the king became extremely impressed. He said that, yeah, actually, even though these people the Greeks have not put in too much effort, he said that their understanding is good. They were able to understand that I am able to see my own face in this, so this is good. So actually, the process of Bhakti Yoga is also quite similar. Now, why does this come in Islamic literature? Like, what's the point of this story? So the point of this story is that actually our heart is also like a mirror. The more we cover this mirror with all kinds of dust and all kinds of different paintings, Krishna will not be impressed. The main thing we have to do is we have to clean the heart. And then when we clean the heart, when the heart is cleansed of all kinds of material desires and all kinds of attachments, then the light of Krishna will shine on that. That is why in the first verse of Shikshashtakam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, what does he say? Cheto darpana marjanam, which means that the mirror of the heart is something that is meant to be cleaned. It's not meant to be decorated. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not saying decorate the mirror nicely. He's saying clean the heart. So that cleansing process is what Krishna requires, because then the light of Krishna will shine through. So what are the symptoms of when the heart starts to be cleansed? So when the heart is starting to be cleansed, the first thing we notice is that we realize how insignificant we are. So up until that point, up until we are practicing devotional service, or up until Krishna is giving us intelligence, until then we think that we are great. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one of the symptoms of people who are not surrendered to Krishna is aham karta, aham bhogi, nityoham balavan sukhi. So a person thinks that I am the doer, he thinks I am so great, I am nitya, I am perfect, balavan, I am, the most powerful, and I am always happy. So an ignorant person always thinks like that. But a person in God consciousness, as soon as Krishna enters into the heart of a living entity, the first thing he makes that living entity realize is that they are insignificant, that they are completely dependent on the mercy of Krishna. So people might think, well, that sounds like a very depressing thing to realize, that, I am a horrible person. That's the first thing that Krishna makes you realize, that, you're completely insignificant. You can't do anything. You can't even lift your finger if you desire to. Like, if you actually analyze how we lift our finger, it's actually quite interesting. Like, you can understand that, okay, there are brain signals that go from here and there, etc. But if Krishna does not sanction that, or if Krishna does not desire that, you can see people who have strokes. They can't lift their fingers. Even though they might desire to lift their fingers, they cannot lift their finger. So actually all of this thing, all of our desires are being carried out by Krishna. So when one realizes that, this whole material world is actually being run by Krishna, and that we are actually completely insignificant, then one actually starts their spiritual life. And that is the first mercy of Krishna. First mercy of Krishna is Krishna makes you realize that we are completely insignificant. Not just in terms of power, but also in terms of our character. Krishna makes us realize that actually we do not possess any good character traits at all. Actually, it is said that the more one advances in Krishna consciousness, the more one realizes that he is completely a useless person. The more one realizes that actually all I have in my heart is the tendency to sin and to fight against Krishna. That is all I have. That is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur, recently we celebrated his divine disappearance day. In one of his bhajans, he sang, there is one famous bhajan. What was that bhajan? Did I write it down actually? Yeah, the bhajan is Amara Jivan Sada Pape Ratha Nahera Punyera Lesha, which means he's saying that my whole life is filled with sins. Amara Jivan Sada Pape Ratha Nahera Punyera Lesha. He says that I have not even done a single pious activity. So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays, who has performed devotional service for his whole life and who is actually a Manjari. He is from the spiritual world. It's not that he is just, composing these poems as a trick of passion, like he's just in a very nice mood so he composed these poems. No, actually those are his real sentiments. That's how he actually feels. He feels that he is completely unqualified to go back to Krishna. And that feeling that I am totally unworthy of approaching Krishna, that is actually the qualification to go back to Krishna. When one feels that they are unqualified to go back to Krishna, then they actually deserve to go back to Krishna. The ways of devotional service are quite mysterious. They are actually exactly the opposite of what we think. The more one thinks that they are qualified and they deserve to go back to Krishna, the more they get pushed back by Krishna. So that is interesting. So that is the first revelation that Krishna gives in the heart of the devotee. That that you are completely insignificant and you're not worthy of approaching me. So then what does the devotee do? If a devotee feels that they're completely insignificant, there's two options. That the devotee may ultimately run away. He may say that, oh, I'm not worthy of approaching Krishna, so I might as well stay in this material world. Or the devotee may go to Krishna and completely fall at his lotus feet and offer prayers to Krishna. He may say that, well, Krishna, I am completely unworthy of being a devotee of yours, but you are very kind and you are very compassionate and you are the merciful and you are the deliverer of all fallen souls. You are the one who, that is your job description. What is one of Krishna's names is Patita Pavana. Patita Pavana means one who delivers the fallen. So if we are fallen, then Krishna's job description is he delivers the fallen. So that is why the devotee will actually go to Krishna in a sense of humility. And that is what true humility is. Humility is realizing that I am totally unworthy of approaching Krishna by myself. So he approaches Krishna with this sense that, you are the one who can deliver me. That is why I am falling at your lotus feet. So then in that mood, the devotee will go and surrender onto the lotus feet of Krishna. So then Krishna may ask a few questions, like Krishna will be like, okay, well, today you are surrendering onto me. If you want deliverance, you're surrendering onto me. You can go and surrender onto the demigods also. You can go and surrender onto the people of this material world. Like you can go and surrender onto the king, prime minister. They may also be able to deliver you. So then what does the devotee do? The devotee will say that, no, actually the only person I will surrender to is to you. I will only surrender to Krishna. My heart will not melt at anyone else. My surrender is unconditional and it will only come to you. So we see an example of this also. Like, can anyone give an example of where someone was offered many different people to surrender to, but then ultimately they only surrendered to Krishna or any of Krishna's incarnations? Any pastimes you can think of? Yeah? Okay, now that's all right. Yeah, any ideas, any thoughts? Dhruv Maharaj was given, Dhruv Maharaj's mother actually instructed him that he goes and surrenders to Krishna himself. So yeah, he went and surrendered to Krishna directly. But are there any places where a person has many options, but ultimately they just go to Krishna or Rama or any of his incarnations? Prahlad Maharaj, yeah, Prahlad Maharaj could have surrendered to his father, Hiranyakashipu, yeah, but he decided to surrender only to Krishna, even in the face of much adversity and very difficult times. So yeah, that's a very good example, yeah. The most classic example I can think of is Vibhishan. Yeah, like from the Ramayana, we all know about Vibhishan. And Vibhishan was rejected by his brother, Ravana. And at that time, Vibhishana could have gone and sought shelter at the feet of Brahma also, because Brahma was the one who had given Vibhishana this benediction that he would remain pious. But actually, he did not go to Brahma, he went to Rama, even though he knew that Rama may or may not accept him. Now, this is it was a dangerous proposition, because Rama is ultimately his enemy. Like Rama was the enemy of Ravana, and Vibhishana was Ravana's brother. So he had absolutely no reason to go to Rama. And in fact, we see that, because when Vibhishana goes and surrenders to Rama, all of the monkeys there against him, they want to kill him on the spot. Like Jambavan, Sugriva, Angada, etc. They were all against Vibhishana. But still Vibhishana went and sought shelter at the feet of Rama. So this is the thing, that Maya will give you all kinds of propositions that You don't have to surrender to Krishna. You can surrender to other demigods also. But the person who is being inspired by Krishna within the heart, as we read in this verse, that like Krishna will inspire you from the heart. Krishna will give you reasons for why you should surrender onto him. And we know that's why the whole Ramayana is known as Sharanagati Shastra, which explains why Lord Rama is the only one who is worthy of accepting our surrender or Sharanagati. It shows that if you surrender to anyone else, your surrender will go in vain. They will not be able to protect you, or they will only be able to temporarily protect you. But Rama is the only one who can grant shelter to someone and protect them completely. So that is why the devotee will understand completely that there is no point of surrendering to anyone else. Our only surrender will be towards Krishna. So then Krishna may ask another question, like Krishna is again very cheeky guy. Like he can ask you a question. He can say that, okay, well, you want to come and take shelter at my feet, and you want to, but he says, if you look at my track record is not very nice, Krishna will say. He says, look at in Ram Leela, for example, he says, look at Sita. Sita was always thinking about me. But at the end, like when the war was finished, I asked her to undergo Agni Pariksha. I asked her to go into the fire. And then after we went back to Ayodhya, at that time I exiled her again to the forest. Now she was pregnant, and that time I exiled her. And then Krishna will say, well, actually you can even look at the gopis. The gopis, they left their whole families, they left everything, and they came to Krishna in the middle of the night. And Krishna was telling them to go back home. He says, no, it is not right for all of you to come in the middle of the night, leaving your husbands and leaving your families, etc. So go back home. So Krishna will say that actually if you look at my track record, it's not very good. I don't always accept everyone's surrender, and even if you accept my surrender, I may send you back. So then what will the devotee say? I mean, these are all kinds of thoughts that will come in our mind. Like when you're taking shelter of Krishna, you might think all of these things, that Krishna does reject his own followers. You might think like that. But actually that is not so. Because then the devotee will argue, if the devotee is being inspired by Krishna within the heart, truly, to approach him, then the devotee will argue that actually no, this is not the case. Even though you apparently had rejected Sita, actually you had not rejected Sita. Actually that whole episode of Sita undergoing Agni Pariksha was nothing but a glorification of Sita's character. Actually because of that, you took the blame. So Krishna takes the blame of being an ungrateful husband. Like Rama, that's why everyone till date, is there anyone who criticizes the character of Sita because she went the Agni Pariksha? No one criticizes Sita. But actually everyone criticizes Rama for doing that. Had Rama not done the Agni Pariksha, people could have raised questions about the character of Sita. It is possible that people would have raised questions, and no one would have questioned Rama. So in that case, Rama would have been acting selfishly, because you could say that Rama was more worried about his reputation than about Sita's reputation. But actually through that act of making Sita undergo the Agni Pariksha, it was proof to the whole world that Sita is actually completely pure in her character, and it raised questions on Rama's love for Sita. So actually, this was an act of extreme mercy and extreme compassion and extreme love that Ram had towards his surrendered devotees, who is Sita. And we see that similarly in the case of the gopis, exactly the same thing. The Acharyas, especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points out that the whole act of Krishna asking the gopis to go back home in the middle of the night for Ras Leela, he says that the whole point of that action was to show that the gopis were completely unconditionally surrendered onto the lotus feet of the Lord. So actually that whole act was meant to glorify the gopis and not to put them down. And actually we see that after that, Krishna accepted the gopis. So then they engaged in the Ras Leela, and which essentially lasted for like one whole night of Lord Brahma. So all of these thoughts will come in your mind that, oh, Krishna does not really accept the surrendered devotees, but actually that is not so. Krishna always accepts one who has surrendered onto him. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita also at the end, Krishna says, what does he say? Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami masocha. So Krishna says that if one surrenders onto me, I will definitely protect that person. There is no doubt about it. That is my promise, Krishna says. Even in Ramayana, Lord Rama says, Sakrudeva prapannaya tavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarva bhutebhyo dadami etad vritam mama. Lord Rama says that anyone who surrenders to me even once, it is my promise that I will protect such a person. Now in the morning we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam and we're reading about Bhishma Dev surrendering or Bhishma Dev remembering Krishna at the time of his departure. And that also is such a beautiful episode, because that also shows that Krishna is willing to break his promise to fulfill the promise of his devotee. Because we know that, I'm sure all of you know that when Krishna had vowed not to lift his weapon on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Bhishma had in turn made a vow that he will make Krishna lift his weapon. Now, although Krishna did not have to lift his weapon, so we know that in the fight that Bhishma Dev was fighting so powerfully and he was so unstoppable that day that Krishna himself had to lift the weapon. He had to lift Rathanga. So it is said, that's why one of his name is Rathangapani, which means that he lifted the chariot wheel to go and attack Bhishma. And then Bhishma becomes so happy. He says that, for fulfilling my vow, you were willing to break your own vow. So Krishna is so magnanimous and so merciful that if a devotee has vowed that he will take shelter of Krishna, then Krishna will somehow or the other fulfill that devotee's vow also. So this the devotee understands through the knowledge that is given to them within the heart. And this is true knowledge. This is real knowledge. When one understands that they are completely unworthy of Krishna's shelter, but still they seek shelter at Krishna's feet, and then they understand that Krishna is the only one who can protect them, and then they understand that even if Krishna apparently rejects me, still ultimately he is going to protect me at all costs. This kind of conviction to arise in the heart may take thousands and thousands of births, actually. This conviction will take, depending on how well we are practicing our spiritual lives, this conviction can take us a long time. Because we see that especially it is an anartha among the devotees who are there in Indian bodies, especially, that they're not able to give up the worship of demigods very easily. They are very much attached to Devi Devta worship. They can't give up worship of Devi, of Ganesh, etc., all of these, Shiva, etc. But a devotee who is cent percent surrendered on to Krishna, for such a person, he is not really worried about the other demigods. We offer respect to them. It's not that we don't offer respects to them. We offer our respects, but we understand that there is no point in worshipping them. So there's a difference between offering respect and worship. So the devotee does not worship the demigods. So through that we can understand that. So then Krishna may again raise a question. He may say that, okay, there have been many like you, like many people like you have come in the past, that they have come and they have tried to take shelter of me, but eventually either they go away or they become astray. So Krishna is pointing out that actually taking my shelter is not easy. So then what does the devotee say? So then the devotee says, Anukulasya sankalpa pratikulasya varjanam. So then the devotee says, okay, Krishna, if taking shelter of you is not that easy, the devotee makes a vow. He says that, okay, from today onwards, I will reject anything that will cause an obstruction to my taking shelter of you. So anything that is unfavorable to your service, I will reject. And anything that is favorable to your service, I will accept. Like, what are some examples? So one example is that the devotee will, from the inside, like the devotee will feel from the inside that from now on, I will wake up every day for Mangal Aarti. Why? Because waking up for Mangal Aarti is conducive to devotional service. I will every day chant my 16 rounds in the morning. I mean, it doesn't have to be morning, but you can chant at any time. But the devotee will make a vow that I will chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He will vow not to engage in sinful activities like meat eating, intoxicating. He will not eat onion garlic. He will not eat food from outside. He will only eat prasadam. So that defines the level of surrender that the devotee has. Because he understands that yes, even though many people have come to Krishna, it is not necessary that they will stay in Krishna consciousness. Many people will leave also. But he understands that if he sticks to these principles of Anukulasya Sankalpa, that he will accept anything that is anything that is favorable to devotional service, and Pratikulasya Varjanam, which means he will reject anything which is unfavorable in Krishna consciousness. Then he is likely to stay in devotional service. So then Krishna becomes very impressed. Krishna says, okay, very good. You've passed the test so far. So then Krishna will say, okay, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? Like, you're seeking shelter, you're doing all the right things. But even in this material world, like when you seek shelter at someone's feet, or when you take shelter of someone, the person may ask, what do you want from me? So then Krishna will also ask you. And that is the real test. Because why are you taking shelter of Krishna? So then the devotee will answer. What will the devotee answer? Actually, this whole class has been prepared using Bhaktivinoda Thakur's bhajans. So because we were discussing the disappearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, basically there's a list of his poems called Sharanagati, and there is a hierarchy in which he approaches Krishna. And this is the hierarchy in which he approaches Krishna. First, the sense is humility. Then he understands that only Krishna is my protector. Then he understands that there is no point in taking shelter of anyone else. Then he says that I will reject everything that is an obstacle to your devotional service. Then he says I will only accept the things which are favorable to your devotional service. And then at the end he submits his prayer. What does he want? So what do you think he wants? What is the final prayer that he makes? Very interesting actually what he prays right at the end. He says, Kabe habe bolo sedino amar. Kabe habe bolo sedino amar. He says, when will that day come? Aparadha buddhi shuddhana me ruchi. So he says, when will my offensive mentality go away? And shuddhana me ruchi. When will I get the taste for chanting the holy name? That is what he's asking for. He says, Kabe habe bolo sedino amar. He says, when will that day come? When will that day be mine? So that is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is asking for. He's not asking for worldly riches. He's not asking for dhanam, janam, sundarim, kavitam, jagadisha kame. He's not asking for that. He's not asking for all kinds of opulences. The only thing he's asking for is, when will I get a taste for chanting the holy name? And actually you can tell, if someone is actually asking this, that, when will I get taste for chanting the holy name? Only that person has taste for chanting the holy name. It's a very, as I was explaining, like bhakti is a very peculiar state of mind. Like only those who have it feel like they don't have it. And when one does not have bhakti, they think that they're the topmost devotees in this world. Like you can see this throughout. So actually that is one way you can test whether someone is truly a devotee or not. If someone feels that they are a good devotee, then they're actually lacking devotional service. Whereas a good devotee of the Lord will never feel that he is a good devotee. In fact, if anything, he feels exactly the opposite. Like there is one Acharya of ours, his name is Prabodhananda Saraswati, and he was the first sannyas disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he quotes one very interesting verse actually in this regard to explain this conundrum of bhakti. He says that actually, O Krishna, he says, he's praying to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he says that, O Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have created a miracle in this universe. He said, what is this miracle? He says, Vanchito asmi, Vanchito asmi, Vanchito asmi na samshaya. He says, Vishwam Gora Rase Magnam Sparshopi Mama na bhavat. He says that, what is this miracle? He says that wherever I look, he says, I can see that Gauranga Mahaprabhu or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has created a flood of devotional service to Krishna. He says, I can see that there is a flood. So much water is there. But he says, what is the miracle? So what's the miracle about a flood? He says, the miracle is that I have not received even a drop of that flood. He says, that is the miracle. That the whole world is inundated in the flood of Krishna Prem, but I haven't even received a drop of it. Actually, that he's not again making up this statement. He's not just, reciting this verse just as a composition, oh wah wah wah, kya shero shairi kariye, wah wah wah. No, it's not like that actually. These are his genuine sentiments. That is exactly how he feels. So the aspect of devotional service is that the more a devotee feels that he is lacking in Krishna consciousness, the more the devotee is actually in Krishna consciousness. So this is a conundrum of devotional service. So coming back to the verse, where Krishna is saying that to those who constantly are devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. This is what happens in the inner life of the devotee. So externally it looks like, yeah, they're performing services and all of this. But internally the devotee cultivates this feeling of inadequacy. The devotee feels that he is totally unqualified to accept shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. And when one develops this humility, then he becomes qualified to enter into the inner rasa of bhakti. So having said that, I will finish there. If anyone has any comments, anything you'd like to share, or anything you don't agree with, or anything you'd like to explain a little bit more, we can do so now.
Praying demigods.
Yeah?
So would you say one should not worship Lakshmi Devi as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So I know Diwali is coming up as well, and everyone does Lakshmi Puja also. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing.
Who's also chief consort of...
Yeah, chief consort of Lord Vishnu himself. Yeah, that's right. The question is, why are we worshipping Lakshmi? I mean, Lakshmi is none other than Radha herself. But why are we worshipping Lakshmi? Are we worshipping Lakshmi because we want auspiciousness and because we want prosperity and all of these things? If we are worshipping with that mentality, then yeah, that's not good, because basically we are asking for something which is different to Krishna. Yeah, so Krishna, it is explained in the, I never quite understood this, but actually if you think about it, it makes sense. If you read the Abrahamic religions, over there in the Old Testament, it says that God is a jealous God. Have you heard of that? I don't know if anyone has heard of that. Have you not heard that? God is a jealous God. Yeah, it says that. Now it makes, first when I read it, I was like, oh, these guys are stupid. Like, how can God be jealous? Like, God cannot be jealous. But the more you stay in devotional service, the more you realize, what does that mean? It means that God requires our unconditional love. God wants us to love Him only. God does not want us to love this material world or anyone else outside of Him. So actually, when you think about it like that, it sounds very sweet. And it's actually a very sweet statement that God is a jealous God, because it means that God loves us, because God loves us unconditionally. He wants us to love Him unconditionally also. God is providing for us for millions and millions of lifetimes. We have taken birth as worms in the stool. We might have taken birth as pigs, dogs, hogs, etc. But still, Krishna has always been with us within our hearts. And He has always been there with us. So, because He has always been there unconditionally, He wants us to also surrender unto Him. So that is why when we pray to Lord Lakshmi, Lakshmi Devi, we should pray to Krishna and Lakshmi. So Vishnu and Lakshmi together. That is what Srila Prabhupada would always say. He would say that if you desire to have Lakshmi alone, that will bring about destruction. Can anyone think of an example where someone desired to have Lakshmi alone and it brought about their destruction? Very famous example actually. Ravana. Yeah, that's right. So Ravana desired to have Lakshmi alone without Rama, and then that caused his destruction. Similarly, we don't even want Krishna alone actually. Like, we don't want Rama alone. Is there an example of where we worship Rama, or someone wanted to have Rama alone and then it brought about their destruction also? Or Krishna alone and it brought about their destruction? Very famous example, another one. Surpanakha, that's right. So Surpanakha wanted to have Rama alone without Sita. And then basically it brought about her destruction also. Whereas there were devotees who wanted to unite Rama and Sita. And those devotees are glorified. Like Hanuman, Sugriva, they tried to unite Rama and Sita and they were glorified. Vibhishana tried to unite Rama and Sita and he was glorified. So anyone who keeps Rama and Sita, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Radha and Krishna together, only such a person Krishna will favor upon. And there's a very strong reason for this also. Yeah, there's philosophical reasons for this in the sense that Radharani is very merciful. So if you desire Radharani along with Krishna, then Krishna is able to cast his merciful glance. Otherwise, Krishna is a judge. Like if you go to a high court judge, the high court judge is going to basically give judgment based on how much good you have done and how much bad you have done. Now imagine if at the end of our lives we go to Yamraj. What do you think will be higher? The list of how many good deeds we have done or how many bad deeds we have done? Which one's going to be longer do you think? Probably the bad ones, right? Yeah, because we don't even know how many bad things we're doing in our lives. And if that happens, then there is no hope or no guarantee that we are going to receive the benedictions of the mercy of Ram or even of Vishnu. So that is why it is said that we should keep both of them together. And the other thing is also true. If someone desires to have Sita independently, then you incur the wrath of Krishna already. So that is also already there. So if someone tries to separate Sita from Rama or Radha from Krishna and desires to have them independently, then you incur the wrath of him. So basically, both propositions are not good. either trying to have Sita independently or Lakshmi independently, or having Vishnu independently. So both of them results in disastrous outcomes. That's why the mood of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and in fact all Vaishnavas, is Radha Krishna Prana Mora Jugala Kishore. So which means we have Radha and Krishna together. Yeah, so that is the mood of our Sampradaya. So yeah, very nice question.
Isn't it also true that where there is Krishna, where there is Vishnu, there is Lakshmi, where there is Lakshmi, there is Vishnu? Generally, that's the understanding?
Generally, that is the understanding, yes, but depends on what mood we try to have him with. Yeah, if we try to have Rama together and we don't want to have Sita, then it causes destruction. Yeah, so that is why the mood needs to be there, that wherever, like for example, like the Vallabha Sampradaya, they pray to Bal Krishna, for example. In there, they don't have Radharani in there. But the idea is that Radharani is hidden within the heart of Krishna. So when they worship Krishna, they worship him with the mentality that Radharani is also there. They're not worshipping with the mentality that Radharani is not there. If they worship with that mentality, then it will cause a destruction. But they understand intrinsically that Radharani is there. Like that's why even in the Radharaman temple, for example, the name of the deity itself is Radharaman. Even though there is no explicit deity of Radharani, but it is explained that Radharani is within the heart of Krishna over there. So with that mentality, if we worship, then that's okay. Yeah.
You can't separate them theoretically.
Yeah, we can't separate them. So that understanding should be there, that we should have them together. Yes, Mataji, you had your hand up before? No? Okay, no worries. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah, when we if we're meant to feel insignificant and unworthy, and then say we do it and we receive all the benefits and we receive all the good things that come along with it, how should we feel towards that?
Yeah, that's a good point, because if we feel very insignificant and then we receive Krishna's mercy, then we might feel that we are significant. And actually that's a constant battle in bhakti. It's not that we can, to maintain this feeling of inadequacy over time can be difficult. But if we regularly hear and if we regularly chant, then basically the understanding will be there. If we are able to develop this sense of gratitude towards Krishna, that whatever I have received in my life has been through the mercy of Krishna, and we are able to see the mercy of Krishna throughout our lives, then it is possible to maintain that. And to do that, actually, we have to constantly associate with the devotees. That's why towards the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada points out that if we want to maintain our proper attitude in Krishna consciousness, we need the association of devotees who will constantly remind us that whatever good things we're doing all of these only through the mercy of Guru. That's why we also recite this verse before, some devotees, we recite this verse before Mangalacharan. We recite, Prabhu, what is that verse? I'm just blanking out. Guru one. Mukam karoti vachalam. Yes, mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum dinataranam. Which means that by the mercy of the Guru, even a lame man can jump over a mountain. A dumb man can recite songs. Yeah. So tad kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum dinataranam. All of this is by the mercy of the Guru. So the devotees will constantly keep reminding us that we are actually completely insignificant, and everything that we have received is through the mercy of the Guru and through the mercy of Krishna. So if we can read Srila Prabhupada's books daily and if we associate with devotees, that mentality will always be there. So yeah, that is why it's required to maintain that constantly. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts or questions? No? Okay, we'll finish there then. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. So we'll stand up now for Gaurati. हाँ मैं बजा